Alright, here we are back again with another Strange and Dark Cases compilation. You know how it works. This is where I take a bunch of crimes that aren't long enough to be their own video, but are definitely worth talking about, and combine them all into one big video. So, let's get started. Here we've got McDonald's worker snaps and kills manager. Afeni Muhammad was an aspiring rapper in East Point, Michigan, who went by the name Risen Phoenix online, mainly on YouTube and Instagram. A lot of her posts consisted of rants, scantily clad photos and videos of herself, and ads for music that never ended up releasing. While she hadn't released much music at all, what she did release was, not very good.
Sometimes I've been feeling like I'm running from these crazy vipers. When they throw that venom my way, I swipe that shit like windshield wipers. Cause like everyone else, you damn sure scattered. Left my heart shattered, broken more than glass dropped from the top of a ladder. I swear it felt like my life didn't matter. Felt like I died and my grave was somewhere on Saturn. I too will incorporate my life story into a song. Then I realized I supposed to have all along. Then I realized everyone wanted to kill me. Cause I'm so real. Baby, I know that my lyrics are way too advanced for my age.
Most of Afeni's rants were about her job. Specifically, they were about her manager at McDonald's, a 39-year-old woman named Jennifer Harris. Jennifer was a mother of two who had been working at that McDonald's location for 15 years by this point.
I was wrongfully treated today at work. I was literally physically tapped on a lot of times, and I said, "Get away from me. Please get out of my space if you don't mind. I can't talk right now," and you still continue to touch me. That made me very unhappy. My name kept getting called. I was doing a great job. I kept getting sabotaged, tempted, so my button can get pressed and I can go out of character. And I know I won't be tolerating that. So since they decided to bully me, let the universe show them what's next, because it wasn't right, and there will be hell to pay for that.
Afeni's rants about her manager, who she continually called a bully, only got angrier over time. Usually, Afeni wouldn't specify exactly what had been done to her, aside from saying that Jennifer had touched her on the shoulder or asked her to leave early. She felt her manager disrespected other people and looked down on them. On Wednesday, July 10th, 2025, Afeni was sent home early once again. Without even changing out of her work clothes, she decided to go on another long-winded rant in her car about Jennifer. In the video, she seemed a bit frazzled, repeating herself numerous times and reiterating the same points over and over. She was so scatterbrained that she actually posted 2 videos saying roughly the same thing.
I got sent home early yesterday. I got sent home early today by the same person. I'm telling you, she's a bully. This shit isn't funny. And she keeps sending me home early. It's not funny. And it isn't funny at all. But to get sent home 2 days in a row, man, and I came in on my off day to make up my time, and she still sends me home early, it's not funny. Somebody will have to do something about that. It's not funny. It's not fair. It isn't funny at all. So, she could keep being a bully if she wants to, but that shit is going to catch up to her. Because it ain't funny at all. She needs to understand that just because she's a mother and got children doesn't mean that she can come in this store, disrespecting people, talking to them like everybody's beneath her. She has no respect. And then throughout the day, she keeps on putting negative energy in the air, talking about people, gossiping about people. She's a bully. She's a bully. Nobody's perfect. It's fucking McDonald's. It happens.
When the next day came around, Afeni showed up to work again and argued heavily with her boss. Jennifer, tired of her behavior, sent her home early once again. According to other employees, it was actually Afeni's own actions and outbursts that had been getting her sent home the whole time. When she was kicked out, she told her boss, "I'll be back," returned to her car, and grabbed a knife. She then, for some reason, put on a mask and returned to the store, despite telling everyone that she was coming back and doing nothing to disguise the rest of her clothes. Afeni walked over to Jennifer and started stabbing her multiple times. One of the other employees on deck said that she immediately knew it was Afeni when she carried out the attack. Afeni then tried to flee. A customer saw all this happening from the drive-thru. Seeing the stabbing, he pulled out his gun and fired it into the air in order to break up the fight. Afeni tried to run away, but the customer threw her to the ground and held her down until the police could arrive. Afeni was quickly taken into police custody, and her boss, Jennifer, was taken to the hospital. Unfortunately, she would come to pass away from her injuries that day. The next day, Afeni was arraigned in court on charges of first-degree murder and carrying a dangerous weapon with unlawful intent. She felt it important to say that she goes by Afeni Muhammad but also goes by Risen Phoenix in court. Her defense attorney said, against her wishes, that he wanted her to undergo a mental health evaluation before they would continue. He said that this was due to his odd interactions with her and certain things on the police report. That is where the case has currently ended. Right now, Afeni is being held on a $250 million bond while she awaits her results and inevitable trial.
No, I don't snap on people. I don't go in there doing that. I tell her, no, I make peace. That's what I'm doing.
Because I know that I'm a great person.
I've been creating peace. I've been creating peace.
And this one is, man feels guilty for killing his wife, so he kills his ex-wife too. On May 13th, 2023, Timothy Taylor was having a domestic dispute with his wife, Teresa Gregg. Teresa was a mother of two and had been working with the New York City Department of Homeless Services. She had been said to have been a very good woman. Unfortunately, she chose a man that was anything but that. The two were known to have had some loud screaming matches in their apartment at all hours of the night. That night, things escalated much more than ever before. Timothy pulled out a knife and stabbed Teresa, killing her right there. It would be her two 12-year-old twin daughters who came home the next morning and discovered her body at around 8:20 a.m. They called an ambulance, but it was already far too late. The bedroom was covered in so much blood that it was clear that she had to have been dead for quite some time. The police came to the obvious conclusion that Timothy had done it. After all, they were known for constant arguments, and he was nowhere to be found. Once he got word that the cops were looking for him, he fled the city as quickly as he could and headed for North Carolina. You see, according to the man himself, Tim had been feeling a bit guilty that he had killed his wife. He felt that his current wife hadn't deserved it. However, he really hated his ex-wife much more and felt that she actually did deserve it. Even though they hadn't actually interacted lately, he decided that killing his ex-wife could help make up for killing his current wife somehow. So Tim decided to take another trip back up to New York, this time to the city of Schenectady. This was where his ex-wife, Tashawn Folks Taylor, lived. On May 28th, only a couple of weeks after the original murder, he checked himself into a hotel in the area at about 11 p.m. He then started to wander the streets, biding his time until he was ready to break into his ex-wife's house. This wouldn't be the first time he was violent with her, as Tim actually still had 3 pending charges related to how he had treated his ex-wife, such as criminal obstruction of breathing, criminal contempt, and harassment. He broke into Tashawn's house and stabbed her 22 times in the early morning hours. He even did so while his own 2 kids that he fathered with her were near her, along with one other kid that she had after the divorce. Even while being stabbed, she did what she could to shield her kids from the attack. Then Tim escaped through a window and fled the scene once again, throwing away pieces of his clothing little by little until he called a taxi and went back to the hotel. Thanks to the testimony from the kids inside the home at the time, it was once again very easy for the police to figure out who had carried out the crime. The police found him a few days later at a bar in Philadelphia and arrested him. He quickly confessed to both of the murders. He clearly told them of his feelings of guilt and why he had chosen to murder his ex-wife after his current wife. Tim was then in jail for the next 2 years. But finally, on July 1st, 2025, he came to plead guilty to second-degree murder in the case of his ex-wife's murder. He is actually still awaiting a trial for the murder of his most recent wife. And this one is, Mom throws baby out the window to save career. Here we have the story of a lawyer for a luxury car maker, that being the Porsche company. Hailing from Germany, Katarina Jovanovic was already the top lawyer for the company at only 28 years old. She was wildly successful for someone her age and was on track to having a very lucrative career. It's believed that this is why she didn't want to risk slowing down at all. Katarina had been pregnant with a baby for 9 months without ever telling anyone she had worked with, and she managed to hide it very well. Still, people noticed that something was going on. One of her neighbors said, "Nobody noticed that the woman was pregnant. Recently she had changed and was no longer talking to us. We thought she was stressed at work." Eventually, she came to give birth at her home in her apartment on September 12, 2023. She didn't even go to a hospital because she had no real intention of keeping that baby in the first place. Caring nothing for the child, she simply got out of bed, walked over to the window, and chucked them out. The infant fell about 4 meters to the ground on the road below, shattering their skull on the ground. There were a number of passerbys on the sidewalk who fell witness to the whole thing shortly after, coming across the grisly scene by coincidence. They quickly called the police, who came to find that Katerina had been the one to have thrown the child. Katerina was arrested and found herself in court in 2024. She admitted to the crime when the trial started in April, but she refused to elaborate as to how it all went down or what she was thinking in the moment. She then made some even bolder claims, such as saying that she didn't even know that she was pregnant. The prosecution wasn't really having it. One prosecutor accused her of murder by saying that she had to have worked to be deliberately hiding the pregnancy from her coworkers and neighbors for that long. Another said that she was mainly worried that being a mother would have spoiled her career. One prosecutor was quoted as saying, "The accused was not prepared to put her life plans, especially her professional advancement, on hold for a child. That was her decision when the baby was born, and as a result, the criteria for a murder conviction are fulfilled." Katerina's own lawyers said that the incident was, at the most, a case of manslaughter. Despite Katerina having admitted to everything, they then began to say that Katerina had only been holding the baby over the balcony minutes after they were born and then dropped them accidentally. Her lawyer, Malte Hoek, said, "It is a drama that affects me personally. My client did not even know that she was pregnant. When she suddenly held the bloody baby in her hands, she was in an exceptional psychological situation. It was an accident. She dropped the baby. How the child ended up over the windowsill remains to be determined." In the end, the court did end up accepting the lesser charge of manslaughter. Still, while her lawyer had recommended 3 years in prison, she ended up receiving more than double that at 7.5. Still, far less than she deserved, most people would say. Even despite being let off so easily, her lawyer had recently said that they intend to appeal the verdict. Even if they do, it's fairly likely that she isn't getting her job back. And here's a weird one. Man built a real death ray to kill Muslims. Now, this one is definitely one of the most inventive stories we've had on this channel, given that it involves an actual invention to kill people. This is the story of a 52-year-old man named Glendon Scott Crawford. Living in Galway, New York at the time, he was an industrial mechanic who worked at General Electric in Schenectady. He was also a veteran of the Navy and a happily married father of 3 children who had no criminal history whatsoever. However, behind the scenes, Glendon had some ideas and plans that the people around him had never heard about. He had wanted to kill all sorts of people who he disagreed with on political and social issues. One group that he hated more than any of the others was Muslims, though. So he decided that he would strive to come up with an invention that could kill as many of the Muslims residing in the US as possible. Surprisingly, he was able to do that. He decided upon using an industrial-grade X-ray machine, of all things. He planned on turning the X-ray machine into a death ray, one that you could simply point and aim at anyone in a nearby radius to give them all a lethal dose of radiation. He came up with the plan to mount the sci-fi weapon into the back of a van. Then it could be driven out to a location with a high population of targets, in this case Muslims, and be deployed to take them out in large numbers. This would be so lethal that anyone within a fair distance of the van was guaranteed to die within about 2 weeks. Given how lethal it would be, the van would be left in the area while the user controlled the weapon via a remote control from a distance away. Rather than deploy this weapon himself, Glendon decided that he would try to market it to a few different groups who he thought might have an interest in using it. First, he went out to a random synagogue and asked to speak to a person who, in his words, might be willing to help him with a type of technology that could be used by Israel to defeat its enemies, specifically by killing Israel's enemies while they slept. He told them that the Muslims were an enemy of the United States and called them medical waste. He was told by the administrative assistant at the synagogue that they were just a bunch of American-born Jews and didn't actually have any ties with Israel. Disappointed, Glendon simply left. The synagogue did notify the FBI though, and they started tracking him pretty shortly after. When they first started looking into him, they doubted he was even serious or capable of building such a weapon in the first place. They were in for a shock. The authorities later came to write, his plot to murder people he did not know was designed to, in his oft-repeated words, take his country back from government leaders by forcing them to change government conduct he perceived as favoring Muslims. After, Glendon tried going to European defense leagues with the idea as well. When that also failed, he even tried selling one to the KKK. In fact, that particular leader of the Klan was an FBI plant sent to monitor them. That just gave the FBI that much more to work with. It wasn't long before the FBI was able to convince Glendon to meet with another undercover agent where he explained his powerful radiation gun that would be powered by batteries. As the FBI continued to investigate him, they came to a shocking conclusion. This weapon would actually work. Theoretically, it was sound, and it wouldn't even be that hard to make by someone who was skilled in the field. They knew that they needed to stop him pretty quickly. The feds busted into the workshop where Glendon was working on the weapon with a co-conspirator, Eric Fate, one of his co-workers from General Electric. They were both arrested and taken into custody. Eric's sentencing took place first. In the end, he pled guilty to providing material support to terrorists. He said that he had built the remote control for the device. For this, he was sentenced to 8 years in prison. Glendon's trial would prove to be much more serious. He was hit with charges of conspiring to use a weapon of mass destruction and distributing information about weapons of mass destruction. His lawyer tried to argue that the case was entrapment, but the jury rejected that argument. Hoping to get a more lenient sentence, he gave a long, rambling speech about physics and his interpretation of certain legal statutes. He also said that his lawyer wasn't very good at his job. He then argued that he never intended to use the machine himself. He only intended to provide technical assistance to whoever did. He said, "I feared for my nation's and my children's nation's future." The judge cut him off and said, "This is bizarre. This conduct is bizarre. You are bizarre." And then the judge came to sentence Glendon to 30 years in jail. And, well, here we go. Serial butt sniffer arrested again. Lately, somehow, it seems that there has been no shortage of poop-related crimes and, things along those lines, and I would definitely say that this case is somewhere in that ballpark. It was the lovely month of August, 2023. A then 36-year-old man named Celeste Karen Crowder of Glendale, California was attending a local bookstore. Celeste wasn't the type of guy that you would want hanging around, and that's for a number of reasons. For one, he was a repeat offender that had been in and out of jail since 2005 when he was only 18 years old. He had served time for both burglary and robbery charges as well as peeping and prowling. In fact, at the time of this story, he had just gotten out of a 60-day jail sting for peeping into a family's home and staring at the children. Before he did that, he had also only been recently released for an indecent exposure incident. But the one reason you may not want him around above all else was his hobby. Michaela Winter was attending the same bookstore as Celeste that day. This was when Celeste came up behind her, crouched down, and shoved his face into her butt crack. You see, Celeste was a serial butt sniffer. Coming up behind people in public and sniffing their butts was a thing of his. And this time, he was caught. Michaela came to post about it on TikTok only to find out that a lot of other women in the area had also been through the same thing with a man fitting his description. Later on, another TikTok user would come to face Celeste herself. This user, at Art of Ether Reality on TikTok, was talking about books and filming a video. At the time, she didn't notice anything happening. It wasn't until she reviewed the video later that she saw what had been going on behind the scenes. Celeste was crouching down behind her, noodling his nose into her nether nectar. This time, thanks to the video, she was able to report him to the police and they soon arrested him once again. Michaela Winter, the woman who originally posted about him on TikTok, came to say, "I'm relieved that he was arrested again, but I unfortunately don't have high expectations with him being kept there for long." Unfortunately and predictably, she was right. Celeste had actually been arrested on the crime of failing to register as a sex offender, something he was supposed to do previously. However, somehow the LA District Attorney wasn't able to gather up enough evidence to prosecute him for that crime. You would think that simply seeing that he wasn't registered would be enough evidence, but apparently not. Celeste was once again free. This brings us up to July of 2025. Celeste never did give up his affection for ass aroma during the 2-year gap. In fact, it came to be known that he had been busted for the crime of butt sniffing several times. The police said that he had been on active parole due to a whole series of lewd offenses. Nothing had changed, and Celeste proved that by going back into another store and trying very much of the same. He walked into a Burbank Empire Center department store and did his usual thing. He walked up behind a woman, squatted down, and buried his nostrils deep in the woman's crap canyon. This woman caught him and once again reported him to the police. He fled the area, but the cops soon found him at a Walmart in the same shopping center. He hadn't gone very far. Celeste Crowder was hit with a charge of intent to commit a crime and is being held on a $100,000 bail. And, let's just keep the weird ones going. Woman arrested for argument over sharing her Applebees. This story started when a 28-year-old woman named Shanisha Cobbs came up with a sneaky little scheme at her local Applebees. They had a special on the menu at the time. For $15.99, you could get an all-you-could-eat meal. That would entail all sorts of different items: boneless wings, riblets, double crunch shrimp, and fries. On October 2nd, 2025, she decided to head over to her local branch and try out her plans. Her plan was simple. She would head out there with 2 other adults and several kids that they'd brought with them. She would order a $15.99 all-you-can-eat meal and keep ordering food for herself while actually passing it around to all the people at the table. She felt that she had discovered a real-life infinite food cheat. It all went well until it was time to pay the bill. This was when Shanisha realized that not only her, but everyone at the table had been charged for an all-you-can-eat meal, given that they were all eating it. When the restaurant confirmed that, yes, they would all have to pay for their own food, she became irate. Eventually, the manager of the Applebees store had to call the police. Even the police dispatcher noted that they could hear multiple women screaming and threatening people. They warned the cops of what they should expect when they arrived. When the cops showed up, Shanisha decided to try and turn things around. She said that the restaurant was behaving, in her words, very unprofessionally, and that she wasn't going to pay any more than $15.99 for that food that night. She argued that nowhere did it say that the meal couldn't cover a whole table. That fell apart quickly when the cops actually looked at the menu and saw per person right there in plain text, not even in fine print. As the police tried to calm her down, Shanisha decided that her next move to make would be freaking out on a random couple eating at the restaurant. When she did just that, her shrieking got even louder than before. Even her own friend was trying to shut her up to no avail. When the cops warned her multiple times and she wouldn't listen, they gave up and arrested her. She was hit with the charge of disorderly conduct and taken off to jail. She's likely going to end up paying a lot more than $15, either with her money or with her time. That misdemeanor charge can result in up to 180 days in prison or a whole $1,000 fine. Not only that, the rest of her group was left to pay the bill after she was carted off. Originally, most news outlets reported this with headlines along the lines of "Woman arrested for sharing Applebees," which makes the restaurant itself look insane and paints Shanisha as the victim of a bizarre, unwarranted arrest. It's only when you actually read the articles that you find she was arrested for the resulting freakout of not having to pay. So, never trust headlines. And, Chuck E. Cheese arrested for credit card fraud. Chuck E. Cheese has somehow come to be featured many times on this channel. I even made a whole compilation video of those cases that performed like crap. Most of those cases usually stem from the fact that Chuck E. Cheese serves beer and parents would often get drunk and fight, but this case is something very different from those. This story started when a woman noticed that her credit card was missing. When she went online to check the balance, she noticed a number of fraudulent charges on her account. They were things like purchases at Whataburger, a grocery store, and a smoke shop that she had never been to. So she contacted the Tallahassee Police Department and made a complaint. When she was able to review some security camera footage of who had been using her card, she told the police exactly who it was. She even knew where her card was likely stolen from: Chuck E. Cheese. Meanwhile, at that Chuck E. Cheese location, the radio had made an announcement that the mouse himself, Charles Entertainment Cheese, was about to come out and greet all the kids. One mother went up to him with her 6-year-old to take a picture. That's when the police spotted the cheese beer rat standing near the doorway and grabbed his arm. They told the mother, "Chucky's busy right now." They then turned to Charlie and told him, "Don't resist, don't make a scene." Children began to scream in panic as Chuck was hauled out of the establishment by the cops. The police threw the mouse into handcuffs and walked him out into the parking lot. Then they tore his entire head off, revealing a regular human man, 41-year-old Jarmel Jones, inside. "That's not Chucky?" began to scream the frightened little children. Right then and there in front of the kids, he was thrown into a police car, busted for his misdeeds. It was reported that the kids soon forgot about the ordeal and went back to playing games and eating pizza. Their loyalty to Chuck was shallow beyond all expectation. Now, Jarmel Jones is facing charges of credit card theft, criminal use of personal identification info, and fraudulent use of a credit card. He was booked into jail, but he was released shortly after on a $1,000 bond. Some people who were there that day criticized the cops for arresting him in front of children, but the truth is that it was his place of work and the most likely place to catch him. Still, on Facebook, one man posted, "Okay, Tallahassee Police Department, y'all couldn't let this man change out of his Chuck E. Cheese costume before arresting him in front of the kids?" Jarmel still denies that he ever even stole the credit card, even though the police found it in his pockets. One of the moms there that day, Courtney Gegenheimer, spoke to the media. She said, "How do you explain this to a 4 and a 6-year-old? I said, maybe they got the wrong Chucky." And now we have, chicken crosses the road, woman gets maced. Here we have a story that follows the common joke, why did the chicken cross the road? Although this time we end up with a bit of a different question. That being, what happened to the chicken when it crossed the road and why does it involve bear mace? It all started when a 38-year-old woman named Cynthia Sosa saw a chicken crossing the road. She decided to stop the car and wait for the chicken to slowly pass. This led to the cars behind her getting angry, not even knowing why she had stopped. Given that the chicken was in front of Cynthia's car, they couldn't see it. So an angry woman behind her decided to pull around and pass her on the road. Just then, the chicken came out from out in front of Cynthia's car and got run over. Cynthia flew into a rage, angry that the woman had just crushed the chicken into nuggets. She took off after her, following her for quite a while. When the other woman stopped her car, Cynthia got out of her own vehicle and approached her window. She grabbed the handle and attempted to open the door and pull the woman out. The woman inside grabbed the door from her end as well, resulting in a tug-of-war with rage on one side and fear on the other. Cynthia, later saying that she needed to teach the woman a lesson, pulled out a can of bear mace and sprayed it through the gap where the door was opened, giving the woman a good blast all over her face. Satisfied, Cynthia hopped back into her own car and drove off into the sunset. The chicken had been avenged. It wasn't too long before the cops were able to find her, though. She was arrested and taken into police custody. She was charged with 2 counts of aggravated battery and 1 count of burglary with assault or battery. The victim in the case didn't even seem to be aware that she had hit the chicken, saying that she was on her way to pick up her kid from daycare when she saw a crazy woman blocking the road and went around her. This woman then followed her, ripped her door open, and doused her with bear mace. As of the writing of this video, it appears that Cynthia is still waiting in jail to see what happens next. And hey, here's some Kentucky. Kentucky woman brings meth to Disneyland. Now, I'm sorry to say that I don't have a Florida man case for you this time. I know that's probably really disappointing, but we do have a Kentucky woman case, and maybe that'll scratch that itch. On May 20th, 2025, a woman named Brandy Asher headed off to Disneyland with her husband. There they arrived at the Walt Disney World Resort's Transportation and Ticket Center, which is this place where you can park your car and ride a little train into the park. Before you can do that, there's a bit of security screening, usually to make sure you aren't carrying a weapon into the park. If you're cleared, you can head off to the train. Brandy would not be getting that luxury. When she had her bag checked, the man doing the screening noticed an odd metal tin in her bag. When he gave the container a little shake, it didn't make a noise. With that being odd, he opened it up and looked inside. There he found a white powder. This was methamphetamine. In addition to the powder, there was a long white cylinder shaped like a pen. This is a straw-like object that enables the entry of meth into the nose, sometimes called a Meth Muncher 3000. Brandy, seeing that her treasure box was opened, quickly grew very nervous and asked the security member to just throw it away so she could move on. When she started shaking and sweating, it came clear to those nearby that what was in the tin was very likely drugs, or at least something illegal. When she was told that she couldn't throw them away, she tried to take them and put them into her pockets to make a break for it. Soon after, an Orange County Sheriff's deputy arrived to check things out. He gave them a solid, "Yep, that's meth," and told them that the long white cylinder was a snorting apparatus. Then Brandy began to tell her story. Brandy told the police that, the day before, a random stranger had approached her at the resort and offered her some free meth, as drug dealers tend to do. She gladly accepted the gift without telling her husband. She said that she then planned on simply leaving the drugs at the resort, but then she took them to the park completely on accident. Inside Brandy's pockets, the police found more crystals matching the original substance. She was arrested and taken in. She has since pled not guilty to a third-degree felony charge of possession of methamphetamine. Walt Disney World Resort has since clarified that it is indeed against the rules to smoke meth at Disneyland. Alright, and this one is Florida man on meth hijacks tiny train. So when I told you before that we don't have a Florida man story, I was bold-faced lying to you. I didn't want to spoil that we actually have a pretty good one. One day, a Key West drug enthusiast named Jonathan Patrick Winslow realized that it was his 57th birthday. He decided to celebrate the day in a way that not many other people would think of. High out of his mind, he made his way up to the Conch Tour train depot in Key West. Leaving his Kia in the parking lot, car running with the radio playing, he made his way up to where the workers handled their little trackless trains that they would usually use for tourists. John told some employees that he used to work for the company years back and that he was there for a little tour of their trains. Not really seeing anything wrong with letting him take a look, they said that that would be fine. It was then that John hopped into the train and drove off, leaving the employees very confused. Given that he said he used to work there, they wondered if John had gotten permission from the boss to take it for a spin. He didn't have that permission. Eventually, it came to be pretty clear that John had stolen the train. Little did he know it had a tracking device on board, so they were able to show the police exactly where it was. Surprisingly, it had gotten pretty far away in a very short amount of time. Jonathan had really been gunning it, so the police headed downtown to bring it back. In the time it took for the cops to arrive, John had actually picked up a few strangers and convinced them to join him on his train ride. When the cops cut him off, they noticed that he exhibited rapid speech and appeared excited, even after the police told him that he was under arrest and was going to be charged. John said that he had only borrowed the train and gave them the "but it's my birthday" defense. It didn't work. He was taken off to jail. During a search, an empty pipe was found in his pockets. He tried to tell the police that it was for weed, but it was for meth. Now he's being hit with charges of burglary, grand theft auto, and possession of drug paraphernalia. He's being held at the Monroe County Sheriff's Office Key West Jail on a $60,000 bond. Once again, thank you for watching my video. If you found the content interesting, please give it a like. It really helps me out in the algorithm, and feel free to subscribe if you want to see more content like this. These days, I have a new merch store. There you can buy stuff on it. If you want, go ahead and follow me on social media. If anything were to ever happen to this channel, that would probably be the only way you'd ever hear about it, and it's the easiest way to contact me. I also really appreciate when people subscribe to my Patreon. There you can get videos early, ad-free, and uncensored. Channel memberships are up too, and you can get most of the same benefits there as well. Once again, this has been your host Kyle. Thank you, and good night.